call the meeting to order now. Welcome to meeting number 12 of the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on February 8, 2022, the committee is meeting to begin its study on survivor pension benefits, marriage after 60.
Je voudrais tout d'abord
I'd like to welcome our clerk, Angela Crandall, who's replacing Mr. Teke today, and also welcome Mr. Clifford Small.
Roberts. So today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, excusez-moi, pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Today's meeting is also taking place in a webinar format. Webinars are for public committees meeting and are available only to members, their staff, and witnesses. Members enter immediately as active participants. All functionalities for active participants remain the same. Staff will be non-active participants and can therefore only view the meeting in gallery view. I would like to take the opportunity to remind all participants of this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name, or if a question is addressed directly to you, so you can answer right away. And if you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the meeting, in the room, your microphone will be activated as normal by proceeding and verification officer. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. That will help our interpreters. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. And finally, a reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. Et là, je voudrais souhaiter.
I'd like to welcome the whole team, all of the witnesses who are here with us today. As an individual, we have Robert Demers, a Royal Canadian Mounted Police veteran, Mr. Walter Pinsent, Staff Sergeant, retired, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Ms. Norma Pinsent, and from the National Association of Federal Retirees, we have the President, Mr. Jean-Guy Soulière. We have the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Anthony Pizzino, and Mr. Patrick Imbeau, Advocacy and Policy Officer. And from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Veterans Association, we have Mr. Alexander Glenn, the National President. You know that you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then committee members will be pleased to ask you a few questions. So we will begin with Mr. Demers, and I'd like to tell you that while you are speaking, look at the screen and I will let you know when you have 1 minute left, and then a red card.
Time is over. So let's be prepared. I'm going to put on my, how to say that? Okay, my chrono. And Mr. Demers, I'm going to start with you. You have 5 minutes dès maintenant. Allez-y, ouvrez votre...
Go ahead, please turn on your microphone.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be with you this afternoon. It's a cause that I care a great deal about because 2.5 years ago, I received a categoric no for a survivor pension benefit for my wife. I'd like to thank Rachel Blaney at the outset for her initiative for C221. I worked for the RCMP for 32 years in Canada and over 2 years in Haiti, working with the ambassador after the coup d'etat in 1991 and during 2 UN missions in Haiti as well. At the beginning of 2020, it had been already 2 years that I was living with my spouse, and I approached the RCMP for the survivor pension benefits, and that's when I learned that I was 63 years old, and so my current spouse wasn't entitled to the survivor pension benefits. Following that, I was approached by Radio-Canada, by a contact, and my spouse and I participated in the filming of a show called La Facture that aired on November 17th, 2020. For those who didn't have an opportunity to watch it, I invite you to do so. It was very well made, and I think everything was very clear. One of the major disappointments when we received a no from the federal level is that at the provincial level in Quebec, we are entitled to the survivor benefit, but it's not available at the federal level. As you probably all know, we're all involved in this issue that we care about. This law, the Militia Act, was from 1901. It's now 2022. And I think the law is really outdated. It's as if after the age of 60, we had no rights. It was just too bad. You're over 60. It's over. I'm sorry, but we are all entitled to fairness, to equality. And this super archaic law hasn't kept up with changes in society. In addition, I sincerely believe that it goes against the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In that time, we know that life expectancy for men was maybe 50, 60 years old. Today, we live to over 80. I heard a comment, I think last year, from an MP who was the Treasury Board Minister, Duclos. If it didn't work for us, we just needed to set money aside and put aside some savings for our spouse. I'm sorry, MP, but I contributed to that fund for nearly 33 years. And I think we have a legitimate right to it. In the current situation, with the cost of living today, if tomorrow morning I set off what it costs us to live today in the condo we rent, my wife wouldn't have the means to stay here. She would have to find probably affordable housing somewhere. So when you say that the spouse doesn't have a right to it, well, it's 2022. We need to advance. We need to evolve. We have a right to equality. And that's part of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I'd be happy to answer all of your questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Demers. It will be our pleasure to ask you questions. So yes, this topic is very important. So we have the opportunity now to discuss it.
like to invite Mr. Walter Penson for 5 minutes, please. And just remind that Mr. Penson is a staff sergeant retired from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So, Mr. Penson, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Please go ahead. Please open your mic.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you very much for this invitation to speak. This is not entirely about Walter and Norma Pinsent. It's about a law that is discriminating, ageist, sexist, destructive, and hurtful, that impacts individuals and families of veterans of the Canadian Armed Forces and the RCMP. We are punishing those who swore an oath to protect and serve without fear, favor, and affection, who will take the bullet to protect us and other citizens of the world. The Armed Forces and the RCMP maintain the right and maintain our image as a peacekeeping nation. Why are we protecting a 1901 regulation formulated under the British North America Act at a time when it was systemic bias and prejudice against women and First Nations? Are we still in that mindset? Today, our Bill of Rights and Constitution reflect Canada's image as being more democratic and sensitive. Our laws have changed regarding sexual orientation, abortion, and the war on drugs. Imagine, women are designated persons before the law. They can vote, can join the armed forces, and rise to the rank of commissioner of the RCMP or any other office of government. We can change. This is proof that we are a people are maturing, growing, and we have reason and common sense. It does have a place in our legislature. Then why is this law not changed? Like one gentleman says, many of us live vital, productive lives after 60. Modern medicine has improved my life through 6 surgeries for arthritis. Norma was 57 when we married and has been my partner and caregiver, seeing me through stressful rehabilitation for 17 years. She is especially supportive of my autistic son, and an indispensable part of our extended blended family. She's known for her generosity and supports families, local organizations, and charities where government can't. My stress level is resulting sometimes in restless nights. I'm continually assessing our resources. I want Norma to be able to live in her own home, to continue to be an integral part of this community. Grant her the benefits of my pension and give us a peace of mind. I'm running out of sunsets, and this issue is heavy on my heart. This week alone in the media, the news reflect that Canada is a reactive care country and seriously lacking in the area of elder care. Apology at this time is a clear sign the issue has not been fixed. I hate to think of Norma ending up in a nursing home like those who have been paraded before us in recent times. We could do well to look at other models of care, and Denmark has been set as a good example. I acknowledge that this is all about money. We have to be careful, though, that we don't lose sight of individuals who are affected, as it is with this 1901 law. Canada would do us proud to get this skeleton out of the closet. Now you have the power to do what is right. Change the law. For goodness sake, let's get it done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Penson. And we are so glad that we also have Mr. Norma Penson with us. So the members of the committee would like to hear you, Mrs. Penson, for 5 minutes. Please open your mic and go ahead, please.
Hello. It's a privilege to speak before a committee whose mandate is to rectify and injustice. I'm Norma, an active, healthy 73-year-old enjoying life, grateful for all it offers. Walter and I share our money, our energy, and our dreams. We want to live in the home that we retrofitted together with all we need to stay safe and comfortable through our advancing years and to the last possible day. We choose to live in the present. And 17 years ago, we rejected the option to buy into Walt's pension. It was prohibitive. We would be investing our fixed, limited funds in an uncertain future and robbing ourselves of joys and necessities our combined resources could provide. And should I die first, that investment would be lost. Our government should rectify this. Fiscally, it is a sensible move. The longer citizens, I will be one of those reliant seniors reaching for services that are scarce and inadequate, a situation painfully highlighted by recent events. Looking ahead to financial insecurity is dreadful. It fills me with dread. I fear losing control of my circumstances, of forced reliance on family, of not being able to afford the care I will likely need. I want to see out my days in an independent, dignified manner. And there's other concerns. Through marriage, I've enlarged my family. Family is a responsibility. I will assume guardianship upon Walt's death of his severely handicapped son. Our granddaughter, who has autism, will need supports throughout her life, and we have 4 other children. I want to continue to serve and support my community as I always have, through committee work, the church, charities. I want to support my friends who are aging as quickly as I. With reduced income, sharing and giving becomes more difficult. Volunteers, as we know, and charitable agencies make our world go round. The less we give of our time and money, the more gaps have to be filled. I have no idea what life will throw at me. Right now, I feel secure inside my family structure. Together, Walt and I manage. Should he die before me, my story changes. I make every effort to shine in my life, and in that, I am like millions of others, giving all that we can and striving to do what is right. I expect no less of my government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Norma Pinsent, for your intervention. Et là maintenant,
Now, I'd like to invite the National Association of Federal Retirees to speak for 5 minutes. I presume it will be the President, Mr. Jean-Guy Soulière, who will take the floor for the next 5 minutes. Go ahead, please. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank committee members for having invited the National Association of Federal Retirees to speak today. I would like to begin by recognizing that I and my colleagues are joining you from Ottawa, the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabeg people, who have lived on this land since time immemorial. For those who aren't familiar with the association, the National Association of Federal Retirees is the largest national advocacy organization representing active and retired members of the Federal Public Service, Canadian Armed Forces, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and retired federally appointed judges, as well as their partners and survivors.
than 70,000 members, including over 60,000 veterans and their families, the association has advocated for improvements to the financial security, health, and well-being of our members and all Canadians for nearly 60 years. Federal Retirees is also proud to co-chair the Women's Veterans Research and Engagement Network, or WREN. WREN's mission is to work collaboratively to ensure equitable lifetime outcome for all veterans. I am here with Association CEO, Mr. Anthony Pizzino, and our Staff Advocacy and Policy Officer, Mr. Patrick Imbeau. I will share my time with Mr. Pizzino, and we will all be pleased to respond to questions committee members may have. Our remarks today are supplemented by a written brief, and our association stands by to participate in other areas identified for study by this committee. Anthony?
Thank you, Jean-Guy. Thank you, committee members, Mr. Chair, for your time today. The Canadian Forces Superannuation Act and the Superannuation Acts for the RCMP and Federal Public Service have provisions for survivor pensions that are paid to eligible surviving spouses of contributors or pension plan members. The limitation of if plan members marry or begin to cohabit with their spouses after age 60 in the case of the Canadian Armed Forces or RCMP, or after retirement in the case of Federal Public Service, has been important to members of federal retirees for decades. While the legislation is rooted in the turn of the 20th century, it's important to look at how pension legislation and regulations have evolved and to consider changes to the factors that impact pensions, including longevity and workforce participation. While veterans, retirees, and their spouses are affected by this difficulty, as our brief details, this is a complex pension policy matter that requires thorough study and assessment before proceeding with any changes. It is essential to have clear, accurate data to define the extent of this concern and to inform any potential solutions and their potential consequences. The importance of this data cannot be underscored enough. We are talking about hard-earned pensions of both serving members of the Canadian Armed Forces and the RCMP. Pension plans rely on the balance between contributions and investment returns to fund appropriate levels of benefits. In 2015 and 2017, the federal government committed via ministerial mandate letters to eliminate the marriage after 60 clawback clause. In its 2019 budget, the government established a $150 million fund for the veteran survivors to be administered by Veterans Affairs to work with a community to identify impacted survivors and to ensure they have adequate financial support. Little information is available in this initiatives, and veterans and their survivors deserve accountability and transparency to know what has happened with those funds so that what they can expect going forward. We have noted that veterans and survivors affected by this issue are often taken unawares. It is, in our view, clear evidence that retirement preparation and planning and pension communication needs to be comprehensive and clearer. Committee members, the brief demonstrates that veterans have been promised that this would be addressed for too long. They deserve answers, and I'm pleased to see that the committee is studying this. I and my colleagues would be pleased to respond to your questions and to provide further information on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pizzino, and also Mr. Soulière. And now I'd like to invite from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Veterans Association, Mr. Alexander Glenn. He is the national president. Please open your mic and talk for 5 minutes.
Thank you for this, and thank you for the opportunity to address this major problem among our retirees. As mentioned, my name is Alexander Glenn, and I go by the name of Sandy. And forgive me, but I'm going to make many references to the notes I made just to refresh my memory. I'm a retired member of the RCMP and the current national president of the RCMP Veterans Association. The current strength of the association is approximately 5,500 former serving members and employees, along with about 1,000 associate members, mostly being spouses, and the vast majority being women. The total number of RCMP retirements in Canada is in the range of about 16,000, but that's a rough estimate. Now, as just to address this origins of this situation, as you're no doubt aware, when Canada's Militia Pension Act was passed in 1901, it contained a section now disgustingly referred to as a gold digger clause, which gave the government discretion to deny benefits to widows deemed unworthy. And that is a most inappropriate way of thinking this day and age, especially when I consider these spouses have been married after the age of 60 for 10, 15, 20, and 25 years. That's not unworthy. A widow gets benefits if she was more than 20 years younger, she was denied benefits if she was more than 20 years younger than her husband, or if he married her after the age of 60. Interesting to note, it predates a woman's right to vote, which was made law in 1916. The act was drafted this way to protect the Canadian military from deathbed marriages, which were common within the United States, and it prompted the Canadian government to take, I assume, preventive action. They did have concerns that the same thing was going to happen. Now, consider, in 1901, the average life expectancy for a Canadian male was 50 years of age, and that's according to a 2017 publication by the National Post. I guess it isn't unreasonable to believe a 60-year-old pensioner at that time could certainly be in ill health. And today, it isn't that way. According to a document published by the United Nations Human Rights Report in 2020, the prediction was that life expectancy would be in the range of 80.3 years. The National Population Health Survey and Canadian Community Health Service estimate Canadian male can be expected to live to the range of 79.3 years of age. Using the deathbed thinking of 1901, I cannot help but believe this was the thinking by those who drafted today's military, RCMP, and public service pension plans, and it's unreasonable to consider the age of 60 as probable deathbed circumstances today. Indeed, if this rationale were to be applied to today's situation, then change the legislation so that marriage over the age of 90 will affect the pension, because 90 is 10 years older than the expected life expectancy today. And back in 1901, it was 10 years later than the 50 years expectancy. Now, I've been serving as president of the RCMP Vets Association for almost 2 years, and must confess before doing so, I had no idea this legislation existed. However, early into my first term, and I'm in my second one now, I began to receive requests for assistance from a number of our association members to make a concentrated effort to get this clause repealed. Not only do spouses, the vast majority being women, lose any portion of their pension, but sadly, that surviving spouse also loses all medical and dental insurance benefits upon the death of the pensioner. I cannot imagine the mental stress, and Walt touched on this, of a pensioner who married over 60 must be going through worrying that his wife of many years is not going to be taken care of if he dies or when he dies. The spouse doesn't deserve this, nor does the pensioner who gave most of his productive years serving Canada. I reached out to RCMP Compensation Services, and they advised they were bound by their pension program rules and couldn't make any changes. They did advise me, and this was referred to by Mr. Pizzino, there is the optional, sorry, I'm going to get into that later. There's the optional survival benefit, OSB. Walt referred to this as buying into an additional pension. It's not an additional pension. It means that the pensioner can divert 20, 30, or 50% off his pension to be used should he predecease is his wife. And I say wife because it wasn't until around 2014 before the wife could possibly be in this circumstance for her husband. Speaking for the RCMP, women never joined the RCMP until 1974.
Mr. Glenn, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's your time, the 5 minutes, it's over. I know that you have a lot more to say, and members of the committee will ask you questions till 3 o'clock. And as we know, it's an important subject, it's an important study. So member of the committee has, I'm sure of that, a lot of questions. So I'd like to start a round of 6-minute questions, and I'll start with the first VP of the committee, Mr. Frank Caputo. Mr. Frank Caputo. Also, I'd like to ask all members that to direct the questions to one of the members as individual, or maybe the National Association of Federal Retirees, or maybe the Veteran Association with Mr. Glenn. So, and you can answer right away if the question is addressed to you. So, Mr. Caputo, for 6 minutes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to also welcome our clerk for the day. Thank all of those who have served with the RCMP for their service. My pre-political career was as Crown Counsel for the last 10 years, so I understand tremendously all the sacrifices that you make to keep us safe. And like one of the witnesses mentioned, I have a child that's autistic, so I understand the circumstances there. And even my pre-law career was as a federal parole officer. So I feel as though I have a few connections here. This to me is a nonpartisan issue. It's not a conservative, liberal, NDP bloc issue. This is something that concerns us all. In fact, I have somebody close to me, too close, I thought, to nominate or suggest as a witness, who was a veteran, both of the armed forces and of the RCMP, who married somebody over 60. So I've had discussions with he and his partner about this situation. This should probably go first off, and I may have missed this, but to the National Association of Federal Retirees. I'm just wondering, has there ever been, Mr. Chair, a charter challenge to this legislation?
I believe Patrick can answer that. Patrick?
Thank you.
Yes, there has been in 1994, and it was deemed that the legislation was not discriminatory on the basis of age or gender.
Right. Okay. I wonder if that ruling would be the same today, but who knows? That was right around the time that the Supreme Court of Canada said you didn't have a right to medical assistance in dying, and we know what happened to that law several years later. So I wonder if that would be the same. I was really struck by retired Staff Sergeant Pinsent and his partner, Ms. Pinsent. And one of the things that were mentioned one of the things that was mentioned in their opening comments was they chose not to invest in the pension. So this, to me, Mr. Chair, suggests that they had two avenues. And I've got a pretty good idea, or an idea, but this is all about them speaking and the record reflecting what they went through. So I'm wondering if they could please take us through that, as in, what was the decision? Do we buy in? Do we not buy in? How much does it cost, and what are the implications? I feel as though that's information the committee should have to fully understand the decision that faces people who are in their situation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, I think, am I being heard?
Yes, very good. Go ahead,
Sorry.
Mr. Pinsent.
Thank you. Yes, the option was there, and assessing it, we were limited in terms of, as Sandy said earlier, it would have been taken from the pension I was receiving and putting into another program. So, I might have gotten out of the force a little earlier than I wanted on compassionate grounds, But still, it was an issue that Norma and I did raise. She's here now. She can speak up, but I wish she would, because she's in charge of finances. So I have to put it that way. And then we decided as a couple that the best thing for us to do is enjoy the $500 a month that we're required to pay in to as an option. And we agreed now. Norma, please speak up.
Yes, we did a lot of talking about it. Walt really struggled because he had a choice: give me a pension or sign that away. And it didn't come easy to him. Actually, it was me who made the final decision on that. And as I stated earlier, we chose to live not in the future, but in the present. And leaving jobs and setting up housekeeping as we did with a blended family and pooling our resources seemed to us at the time the sensible thing to do. And we've been together now 17 years. That is many, many, many thousands of dollars that we've shared with each other and with family and with friends that would be totally and absolutely lost if I had died before Walt. So it didn't, as an investment, it didn't actually make much sense.
I see. So if I understand it correctly, the decision was made because you didn't know the future. There was an uncertain future. I'm just wondering, just so I could have a little bit more context, what would help me is this: what percentage or how much are you able to say you would have had to pay in order to receive these benefits? What kind of benefits would that have entitled to you to? And I gather that those benefits would disappear on Ms. Pinsent's death if she were to pass prior to retired Staff Sergeant Pinsent. Is that right? If you could just walk us through that, please, just so I have an understanding, even just if you can give an example of, if we paid, X amount of dollars, this is what we would have gotten per month. But if I were to pass first, then we would have nothing.
Yeah, Mr. Caputo, thank you. But the time is up, but I don't know if Mr. Penson or Mrs. Penson would like to have a quick response to your comment in 30 seconds, please.
A couple of points. Walt's pension, he got out of the service fairly early, as he indicated. So the pension in and of itself was not well padded, we'll put it that way. And we would have had to pay out of that about very close to $500 a month, $489, $500 a month for him to stash away 50%. I'm thinking maybe it would not have been that. 50% of his pension for me should he die.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And now I'd like to ask Mr. Wilson Miao to ask you questions during 6 minutes, please. Please go ahead, Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for everyone joining us today to discuss about this important topic. And I'd like to thank really all of you for the service you have done to our nation. And I understand this is a very unfair situation, which the law has been passed early on. But would someone can explain a little bit more on what is the marriage after 60 clause, and how long have your organization have been advocating on this issue? And can you tell us about the history in your advocacy and how are we moving along this process? And if I can have someone from the National Association of Federal Retirees to answer. Thank you.
Exactly. Mr. Imbo is ready to respond to that. Go ahead, please, Mr. Imbo.
So essentially what it is, it's part of at least three pieces of legislation: the Canadian Forces Superannuation Act, the Public Service Superannuation Act, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Superannuation Act. And they're all a bit different. The one specific to veterans is essentially that the survivor or contributor is not entitled to an annual allowance if at the time the contributor married the survivor or began to cohabit with the survivor in a relationship of conjugal nature, the contributor had attained the age of 60 years. And so that essentially is very similar in the other pieces of legislation. For public servants, it's after retirement instead of at the 60. For our association, in terms of we were supportive of the court case in the 90s. We've been supportive of working on this issue since 1992, as far as I know. In 1992, that's when the provisions, and just to answer the question, you can that was posed earlier, for a survivor pension to have the reduced amount, you can either do 30, 40, or 50%, which you can imagine is a substantial amount for someone who is for a couple on one pension. And so we've been active at least since then, speaking regularly with MPs on this file. I believe that we went through the legal route by supporting the court case in the 90s, but have been more taking the political route since then. I'll let someone else speak on if they would like.
Please, if anyone would like to add on to this.
There's an advisory committee at the Public Service Pension Plan, and this has been a hot topic. I was the pensioner representative on that pension advisory committee for a number of years, and our association was the one that first raised it at that committee and has been supporting it on the public service side. We also had representatives on the Canadian Forces Advisory Committee and the RCMP Advisory Committee. There's a pensioner representative on these committees, and all three committees have been pushing for a resolution to this. But as Anthony mentioned in his opening statement, information is needed. You just can't go and present recommendations without having the information. So information gathering is something that we have been asking the government and the chief actuary, who takes a look at all these pension plans and makes the projection to cost, what it would involve, and then you can start talking about the solution.
And it seems like the clauses have been quite outdated from what I'm seeing. But would you say the elimination of these clauses will lead to a correlated increase in the pension contribution to cover the financial shortfall? And would those increase look like? Like, what would those increase look like?
Yeah, Mr.
I was just going to say what Jean-Guy just said. With essentially, to know that answer, you would have to have the actuary look at it. The PBO would have to look at the question, or you'd have to have someone look at exactly what the cost would be. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be increased contributions. It could be a solution like, for example, the mandate letters, which was the ventilators, or the veterans fund that was suggested. That doesn't get to the root issue, but at very least there are funds there. So there are other solutions other than increased contributions, but increased contributions could possibly be one, which is one of the reasons why I think study is helpful from an actuarial perspective.
Mm-hmm.
May I speak on this?
Of course.
First of all, in terms of the contributions, using as an example, and we've got many pensioners in this situation in terms of cost. If we've got a person that came to me that was paying $750 a month, and he's been married for 17 years, he's put in, if he made it to the age, well, so far he's put in $153,000. If he dies, the government keeps that $153,000. There's probably a 50% chance that it's a profit-making venture on behalf of the government. So I doubt that there's going to be much change. And the Veterans and Families Wellbeing Fund, the RCMP is not eligible. That's only for military veterans. So it is a potential profit maker. discussion as that does sound, but there's a lot of money involved. Thank you.
Thank you. And I understand in budget 2019, it was announced 150 million over 5 years starting in 2019 to create a new veteran survivor fund. And out of that, how much of the 150 million is going to the survivors? And is it enough to meet their basic needs?
As I said earlier, not a penny goes to any RCMP spouses. That's strictly a military venture.
It also has not been. There's been nothing handed out as far as I know for veterans either.
And how much would an average survivor be missing out on this, and compared to those who are married before the age of 60?
Excuse me, Mr. Miao, could you keep your question for the next round, please? Because we are dealing with about 7 minutes each. So keep your questions, and next time you'll be able to ask it again.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Je vous en prie. Et là, je voudrais...
Thank you. Now I would like to invite the second vice chair of the committee, Mr. Luc Desilets, to ask his questions for about 6-7 minutes. Mr. Desilets, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello to all of my colleagues. It's a pleasure to see you, and it's good to see so many witnesses today. It's wonderful to have this diversity of opinions. The topic today is one we care about, of course. Really archaic and discriminatory clauses. And if we could do a secret survey of all of the MPs around the table, regardless of their political party, I don't think anybody could agree with this type of discrimination in 2022. That being said, I care so much about this that I had it included in the Bloc Québécois platform, these two clauses, for 60 years and after retirement. We have to remember that it was in the mandate letters of the minister in 2015 and 2017, so it was renewed. We'll have the opportunity to discuss it again, but I don't understand why. Why would it be in a minister's mandate letter without there having been an analysis of such a measure, the relevance of such a measure? So it happened again in 2017. In 2019, there was $150 million, as my colleague said, to compensate, it would seem, over 5 years. And since 2019, as far as I know, there's been nothing. Nothing's happened. We haven't heard anything. I don't know what's happening with that program. And it seems that the RCMP wasn't affected by it. I don't understand why the RCMP wouldn't be included in that Survivors Fund. I would ask Mr. Demers to answer this question. How did he feel when he learned that the Liberal Party had dropped that withdrawal of the age of 60 clause for compensation? And if you have additional money or additional information, has there been money given to whom, in what circumstances? Because as far as I know, well, I don't have any information on that. Thank you. You can hear me? Yes? Yes. I'm not in a position to have numbers, but what's been said at the RCMP's level and for federal retirees is that there are millions and millions in that fund, investments to increase that fund. Well, it's a huge amount of money, but there's no one to date, as you've said, who has a number on how much money has been set aside to cover that in the case where we would change the law, as we hope. Okay. That's insightful without really being an answer. So, Mr. Glenn, my question is the same one. It's simple. Are you satisfied with the idea of those two clauses being withdrawn and with them being replaced by that $150 million?
Thank you. It's kind of irrelevant. We're not eligible. That's simple. That $150 million, and I understand none of that has even been spent. The RCMP is not included. The government of Canada does not recognize the RCMP as veterans. Therefore, we were excluded from that $150 million. In terms of our superannuation fund, I know it was at one time in the billions, and some of that was transferred back over through Treasury Board regulations or decisions, but I am no expert on that. I canvassed our entire association just to see how many people were impacted overall. And 81 people responded back to me stating that they were worried or were already in financial difficulties because of the legislation. So we're simply stated, I'm not at all happy, and I'm representing our association in saying this, that any of those actions or promises are repealed. We need this not only as a promise, but we need it as an action.
Thank you. Mr. Souliard, would you have an answer to that question? If that addition is relevant in replacing those two clauses. I'll give you my impression, and then I will ask Patrick, who's an expert on that. I think that $150 million was to satisfy people, but it's not my impression that it was to go directly to compensating for the fact that people wouldn't be receiving pension benefits. I think somebody mentioned the money the government took a few years ago when we changed to the new law in the year 2000. There was $50 billion in surplus in pension funds, and the government decided to take that money and reduce the national deficit at that time. Perhaps Patrick? Yes. The funds are supposed to assist these people, but they haven't been dispersed. Nobody has received any money. I think they're supposed to conduct a study to see how to disperse those funds, to give them to people who need them, but they haven't been spent. So you're telling me that that money that's been available for 3 years, not a penny has been spent? No, not one. Not in the hands of the people who need it, at least. And it doesn't change the problem, the root of the problem. The fact that even if those funds are given, in a few years the problem continues. The problem will increase, that's clear. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Desilets. Now we will continue. I would like to remind you that currently we are live on the Parliament's website, so anybody can connect and follow our deliberations on the Parliament's website. So I'd like to invite Rachel Blaney for the next 7 minutes to ask her questions.
Ms. MP Blaney.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I, first of all, just want to thank everyone so much for their testimony, especially those of you who are sharing very personal and intimate stories about the reality you're facing because of this quite frankly, very apparent injustice in our country. So thank you for taking this up and being able to share what is happening in your life so that we can all as parliamentarians better understand it. So if I could first start out with Mr. Demers. First of all, thank you again for your very personal information that you shared. You said in your testimony that your wife would not be able to stay in her home at the event of your passing. And I just would like if you could tell the committee what that feels like to carry the weight of worrying about the safety of your spouse of, I believe you said, 17 years when you meet your end.
Je me sens comme si on monte en arrière.
If we go back in time a little bit, when I got the news in 2020, my wife was in the living room, and I went towards her. She was so surprised to see my face. She said, "What's happening? Have you seen a ghost? You're as white as a sheet." And I told her what was going to happen. It was like receiving a 2x4 in the head. I couldn't believe my ears. Even today, where we live now, if I pass away tomorrow morning, she wouldn't be able to stay here. She'd have to find, perhaps not low-income housing, but of lower quality. So it makes you feel cheap. And what I find really sad, as with any veteran here, we've all served our country in Canada and abroad. I came close to death a number of times in Haiti. And at age 60, we're told, "Thanks for your service, but your spouse, she won't have anything." And that's fine.
Thank you for sharing that. And I really am impacted by how you talked about feeling like you were hit by a 2x4. So I guess what I want to get clarity on is you found out in 2020. So that means to me that it was not made clear to you at any point of your service that if you were marrying after 60, that this would be the outcome. Could you speak to that?
Exactly right. I never heard of it. Maybe I should have checked more. J'aurais dû vérifier.
I should have looked into it a bit more. When I was told that, to me it just made sense. My spouse would receive my survivor pension benefits. When I was told that over the phone, honestly, it was the first time I heard anyone talk about that. And I was stunned.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think that is incredibly important, that it's just, it's not right, but it's also a shock, which really makes probably you as a human being feel very uncomfortable with your partner, that you didn't warn her that part of being with you would be this potential outcome. So thank you for that. If I could come to Mr. Pinsent next. You talked about being married 17 years to your amazing wife. I really appreciate both of you testifying here today. I think hearing from both of you has been really helpful. But you did talk, Walter, about feeling stressful, thinking about what the future was, and the hard conversations that you had with your wife about how you would make your financial decisions. So if you could just explain, because I think people need to understand how stressful it is for you to carry with you the fact that when you go, all the benefit that you bring to her personally is gone, but also what that means financially for her future.
Yes, it's a problem. Well, you see, it makes me feel that we've been neglected in our duties as a husband because, like I said, it's I'm at the age now where it's a major concern that my beautiful wife have some some benefit for taking care of me since I got a divorce. It's not her fault that when we got married that I was strong and I was everything else. But through the years, the last 17 years, I've been aging at a rate probably that makes me more concerned now. Yes, she should be worthy of. It's shameful that I have to stand here and talk to people like yourselves about trying to justify my finances after death, but it's not. It's the principle of the law. I mean, I don't want to start going into what I've been seeing even so much as last night, how laws have been changed to accommodate a law that it was unreasonable. And I'll mention it. It was the blood transfusion part. The blood transfusion law was changed because of pressure from people. And this, since 1901, we haven't seen anything. And so I felt kind of insignificant about this whole thing. I had a good career. Hello?
Can hear you, Walter. We can hear you, Walter.
You couldn't hear me?
We can hear you. You're fine. Continue.
Okay, I'm sorry. So basically, how I feel is that she's been a good caregiver to not only me, but this community. She's well respected. And it's almost like an insult that I would leave this earth and not have anything to leave.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pinsent. Thank you, Ms. Bliney. We're going to go to another speaker. So, okay, now for 5 minutes, I would like to invite, I don't know if he's going to take the Mrs. Kathy Wagenthal, she's there.
I certainly am.
Oh, so sorry. I didn't
Chair.
see you from the beginning. Okay, now
No
the floor
problem.
is yours for 5 minutes. Please
Okay,
go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you all for being here today and for, again, sharing your personal circumstances and your heartfelt responses to either what you're experiencing personally or those of you that are involved in advocating on behalf of those that this does impact. I would like to ask a question, and I'm going to ask Norma if she would respond, and also Robert, just to get that Pinsent feel again to this question as well. In our notes, I understand in the 2015 mandate letter for the Minister of Veterans Affairs, it was a top priority to eliminate the marriage after 60 clawback clause. And then the government abandoned it, this legislative route, and didn't eliminate it. And instead, in Budget 2019, it announced the creation of the Veteran Survivors Fund, which we've been discussing. And it appears to me, in the way that it's worded here, that the majority of that was initially to be spent over 5 years, first of all, on determining what this should look like and to work with the community identified. So, however, what was done was solely a research effort by Professor Eric Lee of the Faculty of Management at the UBC. They were given a $125,000 grant from the Canadian Military and Veterans Health Research Institute. They submitted their report in December 2020 after interviewing 7 surviving spouses and 3 veterans. Now, we're always told we need a critical mass to come up with any conclusions that have weight. Do you feel that 7 surviving spouses and 3 veterans, is that a fair representation of people who would be in your circumstances? Perhaps Norma first, and then Robert, if you would.
That's amazing. That is totally amazing. As I've said, I'm secure inside my family, but I know there are countless stories out there where that would have had impact in a study or whatever, such as you're speaking of. I can't, but what amazes me is that we're looking at it with a very fine comb at the moment. But what stands out to me is the injustice that sits at the top of this. Any one person's individual story probably is not as important as the overall injustice of denying pension to a spouse, especially of a vet who has already paid in for 25 years. Mm-hmm. Where is that? And now he's with me, and happily so. We have a lovely time together, and it makes no sense to me. Right. And if it's the injustice. It's not even the individual story.
So can I take from that then, though, that what you're saying here is to redirect their thinking to move over to this different approach to the issue and study further, but yet not truly deal with the issue that everyone knows exists. And whether it was 5 spouses or 300 spouses, it's the injustice that is wrong.
Yes, and 5 stories, there would be 300 different.
Right. Okay, Robert?
Ouais, je suis encore assommé.
I'm still stunned by what Norma has said. We always talk about statistics, 7, 3, 2. The injustice is there. It has been there for so many years. The law dates back to 1901. Even today, nothing's been done. After the show aired, La Facture, that we participated in, I received calls from RCMP veterans and others who sent me emails. That's when you realize I'm not the only one. There are a lot of people experiencing this injustice that should have been corrected a long time ago.
Thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate that. Do I have a little bit of time left?
No, it's over. No,
all right, no
5
problem.
seconds.
Very good feedback. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you so much. And now let's go to Mrs. Richie Valdez for 5 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, colleagues, and thank you to our witnesses for your important work to support our veterans with the study, but also for your very important testimony. It's really heartfelt, and you can hear from all of us that your testimony is very valuable. And also special thanks to those who have served and who continue to serve our country, and to the spouses as well. We all need to work together to support our country, so thank you for that. So, Mr. Chair, through you, I'll direct my questions to the National Association of Federal Retirees. I do have a few questions, so let's see if we can get through them. So first is, what do you think that common law partners, why do you think the common law partners have not been included in the benefit process as well? If you can add your input.
Mr. Embo or Mr. Soulière?
Jean-Guy.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I was going to say, I mean, the common law, they are included. So you don't, it only affects marriage after 60. But if you have a spouse, I can find the specific wording. But if you have a spouse that existed before, not necessarily married, but a common law spouse, you can receive survivor benefits.
Perfect. And how could this policy become more fair to include LGBTQ partnerships?
I believe it does specifically state that it can be, actually it literally says both same-sex and...
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so have you received any specific input or testimony from women's veterans associations about these reforms, and have they made any suggestions through you regarding or provided you any feedback on this as well?
Very specific to this point, to this issue, not specifically. It is, I mean, obviously, it does affect female veterans as much as it affects male veterans in terms of just like it doesn't matter what gender you are, you will be affected by this, although it does disproportionately affect it'll be more, it's more female survivors and male veterans simply because of the demographics of veterans.
If I could add something, that's a good point that you raise, and I did mention in my opening statement that we are quite involved with the women veterans research and engagement. I will make sure that question is posed. Maybe there is some information there, and if there is, we will certainly provide it to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, because we've had many different witnesses come forward, and the women's testimony in particular is really unique, and so that's just what I was trying to understand as well.
The person who did the research that we've been talking about, the person who spoke to the 10 people who were affected by this, he mostly spoke to women. His name is Dr. Eric Lee, and I believe he's speaking at committee in a couple of weeks, so you'll be able to ask him that viewpoint in a couple of weeks.
Perfect. And so this question is also now for Sergeant Pinsent and Mrs. Pinsent. So you've talked about how this policy has negatively impacted your life. So could you just describe for all of us if we were to change the current policy, how it would positively impact your lives?
For me, it would give me some clarity as to, the law. So many laws have been changed. Like we're a sensitive society, and so many laws have been changed. It will impact not only, like I said in the beginning, it's not entirely about Walter and Norma Pinsent. It's about the individuals and families of veterans of the armed forces and the RCMP, and other people. I don't know of any other pension program that would be even compared to this. If this law were to be changed tomorrow, it would make the happiest man in the world.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Pinsent.
Yes.
It would change how, the days and years, hopefully, that come. We purposely retrofitted our home and invested our funds in making it as wheelchair accessible as possible. We are presently changing our bedroom ensuite to make it better and more easily accessible to either and both of us. If with an increased funding for me after Walt's death, plans would very much be different. I am looking at staying here as long as I possibly can, as opposed to having the funds that might give me a cottage in a city closer to a hospital. All of these sorts of scenarios that crop up for every couple that's approaching our later years like we are. Yes, that money would make a massive difference in how we were approaching our futures and in the way we have been working together up to this point.
Thank you so much. And là maintenant, nous allons passer.
Now we will go to 2 questions of 2.5 minutes each. The first will be from Luc Desilets. You have 2.5 minutes, Mr. Desilets. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to return to Mr. Eric Lee's report. I'm glad he'll be coming before committee because I'll have questions. $120,000 for a report. 7 people as a sample. I don't understand that. For a qualitative scientific study, usually there's still more than 7 people, so it's really not quantitative, and I have a hard time understanding. And I don't understand why it's not available. Is it a secret report? Will it be published? It's not accessible to us, and I don't understand why. These are questions we'll be asking. Mr. Demers, thank you for agreeing to do that show L'Affecture, and that raised awareness. That was the main source for me. And you did it very well. Congratulations. Earlier, you referred to the fact that in Quebec, you said that pensions are treated differently. Could you elaborate a little bit on that quickly? What I've learned is that at the provincial level, the provincial government has a survivor pension benefit. We lose it at the federal level, but at the provincial level, it exists, it's in place, and it works. So why would it be that at the federal level, it would be zero for us? I'll be polite and I'll say that it's BS. There's no issue at the provincial level for the surviving spouse, but at the federal level, nope. We go back in time, but it's 2022. It's time to make progress. I understand. I'd like to see how it's going in other provinces. I'd have a question for Mr. Pinsent. You referred to Denmark's model. Could you elaborate a little bit on that for 1 minute? Just a few seconds. Please go ahead. Mr. Pinsent? Your microphone?
On microphone, you click on.
Sorry.
In the 15 seconds, please. 15 to 20 seconds.
Well, CBC did an inquiry about this exact thing about elderly care, and it stuck out that the example they used was Denmark, and it was on just a couple of nights ago. And yeah, that's one of the things I guess that would be of concern to all of us now who are aging, and especially for healthcare. What I'm talking about.
Thank you so much. Merci, Monsieur Desilets.
Thank you, Mr. Desilets. Now we will go to Rachel Blaney for 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. You have the floor, Ms. Blaney.
So if I could just go quickly to Sandy, I believe you told a story about a veteran who's put aside, I think you said about $153,000 so far for his wife. And now I understand the wife is not doing well and will probably not make it. And I just want to clarify that with the way these pensions work, folks are giving up part of their pension, between 30 to 50% of their pension every single month. But if their loved one passes before they do, that pension disappears and all of that money is returned. Could I just get clarity on that?
The money is not returned to the pensioner. The government keeps the money. So in that case, it was $100 and some thousand that invested in her security. If she passes, not a penny goes back to the pensioner. And you got to remember, pensioners get small amounts. A big pension is $2,000. If you give up 50% of that to make sure your spouse is taken care of, your family has to live on $1,000 a month. After putting your life on the line, especially the RCMP for sure. I've been in some bad situations, and you just do it again. Can you imagine soldiers that are giving up huge portions of their life, the most productive portion, and can't afford to provide for the spouse? And if he does pay into it or she pays into it, that money's lost. So is it a 50% chance of profit for government? I'd hate to think that was their thinking, but that is the reality.
Okay, if I could come to the federal retirees, I guess I want clarity on that. If I could hear if there's any other jurisdiction that doesn't do that or allows survivor pensions. But I also want clarity about if you are 55 and you're a retiree, a federal public retiree, if you retire at 55 and then you get married at 68, is this apply even though you got married before 60? I need clarity on that. If I could leave that to the federal retirees.
Patrick?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of things there. So first off, on federal retirees, how that works. So if you got married at 58, but it is after your retirement, then it's after retirement. It's basically right after retirement. It's basically when you get your first paycheck as a retiree. Then that's very similar to other jurisdictions and other pension plans. Basically across the country, this is fairly common in pension plans, these kinds of after marriage types of things. They've existed in pension plans for ages, which doesn't mean it can't change. It's just the way it's been. But it does have, as two members already brought it up, it does exist in Quebec, for example. There is no marriage after 60. There is no discrimination based on age in the pension plan. In Newfoundland, there isn't for the public service, and also the CAT pension plan. Those are the only three examples I'm aware of. The vast majority of plans have something similar like as this. But again, like I said, just because it exists doesn't mean it can't change.
And if you're common law and then you get married after 60, so common law at 55, get married at 60, is there any change there?
In 5 seconds, please, or maybe that Mrs. Blenny will come back with that question. Go ahead, Mr. Imbo.
For federal retirees, no, there's no, it doesn't matter. You can be common law beforehand and continue, as long as you can prove the relationship existed prior to the retirement.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And let's continue with the questions. We have our colleague, Mr. Fraser Tolmie. I'm pretty sure that he has a lot to ask this afternoon. Mr. Tolmie, the floor is yours. Open your mic. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you everybody for your service, and more importantly, thank you for your advocacy. I think one of the challenges sitting here, as Mr. Desolé, my colleague from the bloc, shared earlier on, is that this seems to be like a no-brainer. It seems to be that there is an answer that in 2015, the government of the time was coming forward with that answer, and then all of a sudden pulled the rug out. And so, you know, for me, it's very disappointing and frustrating to be sitting here discussing something that should have been dealt with 6 years ago. And so really, you know, I really don't have many questions, because to me, I think we all agree, sitting here looking at each other on these cameras, that this should be taken care of. And so I would ask the question to Mr. Soulière, did the government ever give you a heads up that they were going to backtrack on this promise that was made in 2015?
No.
Okay, well, that gives me another opportunity to ask another question.
Okay.
You know, has the government ever responded to you with any numbers? And, you know, and how long have you been asking and advocating for this?
Well, I can only speak for the time I was on the advisory committee, the pension advisory committee, and I was there for a long time. They pussyfooted around the information, never provided complete information to the advisory committee at the time that I was on, and I was on until, say, the 2013, 14. And I had been there for a long time. No, the lack of information was all I heard from the chief actuary is that it's going to be expensive, but what did that mean? I don't know. And of course, we've always advocated that changes were possible because of the 30 billion surplus that was in the pension fund prior to the year 2000. If you recall, at that time, the government changed the pension legislation to permit investment. And investments that, you know, you have to look at. What gets to me in the conversation, if I can offer one personal comment, is forget about 1901 and focus on this year. You know, we tend to try to change legislation. Let's not change legislation. Think about establishing legislation. Take the situation that we have today and establish it, getting rid of all of the negatives that happened in the past. Just a personal note, if I could.
Okay, Mr. Chair, how much time do I have?
You have 2 more minutes.
Oh, 2 more minutes. I thought I only had. Oh, well.
It's
okay.
a 5-minute round.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Again, I will say that, you know, obviously there's frustration here, and you know, one of the observations, being ex-military, and then obviously in other conversations that we've had with vets, the esprit de corps is get the job done, right? Get the job done. Go out there, do your job, get the job done, and then when you come up against something like this, it's bureaucracy and excuses and finding reasons why and the easy out and pushing it off, and so I just want to commend you again for your advocacy. I want to commend you for your passion, because it's not just about doing this for yourselves and your families. It's for doing for other families, as Mr. Soulière said, in the future. And so, you know, Mr. Soulière, I'll go back to this. Did they give you any reason why that they backed out or they changed their minds on this?
No, I don't recall that point of it. I was out of the association for a couple of years, and that happened during the time I was there. But I don't believe, Patrick.
No, not in the last few years. There hasn't been a good explanation, at least that I'm aware of.
Okay. So, you know, we get a sampling of 7 people, but I mean, I know that when you're, I'm out of time.
Yeah, yes, you're pretty close. So
you're playing me today.
Yeah, you know, it's tough for me to cut you, everyone when you're speaking, and the discussion is well interesting, but I have to do that as a chair. So
I'll see you in the house next week.
All right. Okay. No problem at all, Mr. Tulvey. And I'd like to invite Mr. Terrence Rogers for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to say a big welcome to all of the witnesses here today. It's been really enlightening for me to hear some of the personal stories and talk about how the circumstances they're facing because of this clause, marriage after 60. I especially want to say welcome to Walter and Norma, who live on the beautiful Eastport Peninsula, which is actually in my riding of Bonavista, Beer and Trinity, and I want to welcome them today. So just a couple of questions. First of all, Norma, you were referring to, I think Sandy might have clarified this, but I want to make sure. You were saying when you and Walter had a discussion about putting the extra money per month into a survivor's program, survivors, the option, I guess, to have a survivor benefit plan, that $500+ a month, if you pass before Walter, that you would not receive, or Walter, sorry, would not receive any benefit whatsoever. That money would be lost. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you so much. Now I can really appreciate why you took the decision you did, and fully understand. So for the National Association of Retirees, what have you heard about how this current pension, exclusion stipulation affects the mental health of veterans and their families? And I know Walter talked about this, and so did Norma, but as an organization, have you heard back much detail from people about how this is impacting their lives and lifestyles?
Yes, it is one of our major resolutions that we have been for years and years advocating for. If I recall correctly, the opportunity of buying an annuity only came after age 60 and after retirement, only came into effect if I recall correctly, when the new legislation, the new acts were enacted in the year 2000. I don't think it existed before.
It's in 1992.
1992. Okay, so it did exist before, but people were not aware of it, and we keep telling people as part of the pre-retirement seminars that we give and participating in pre-retirement seminars about this option that they have. But it's hard. We publish it periodically in our SAGE article, in our SAGE magazine. But it is difficult, and yes, we hear it. There's not a week that goes without someone bringing in a case. And we have examples in the brief that we presented to the committee about exactly some of the same points that have been raised in the personal testimonies here. So we are quite conscious about it. Yes.
On page 5.
Okay. What's that?
On page 5, we have numerous testimonies from about some of our members.
Okay. And just to follow up with a further question, does the U.S. or other international partners that was referred to earlier have similar policies in place, or have they been changed over the years?
Patrick?
The U.S. it's a very different system. It's more like a life insurance plan that you purchase into. I put it into the brief because it's a bit complicated, but it's not really a comparable system that we have.
Oh, okay. So what about other jurisdictions, other countries like the UK or others? Have some of these been studied and reviewed to make comparisons?
I'm not aware of a study to do with a comparison, but if I'm given some time, I can come back to you with an answer.
I'd appreciate that. Yes, and I guess the other question across my mind is how many veterans survivors are out there this would apply to? I know you talked about actuarial studies and some of the other things in the past. So, how big or how broad is this issue?
I think that's exactly our point, is that we don't know. Like the study by Eric Lee, he tried to go out and find people, but they're kind of, especially he was trying to do the study during COVID, right? So it was very difficult to find people. That's why he only ended up with about 10 people in his study. And so trying to find those stories, like we hear them, like as Jean-Guy said, we get people who email us and let us know, and we share it on our Facebook and people can tell us stories, but we don't have an exact number of how many people are affected by this or could be affected by this. Because the other thing is there's lack of communication on it. So because people aren't aware of these issues until it happens to them, they aren't necessarily aware if they're going to be affected.
Yeah, and I asked that question. I asked that question to deliberately get that answer because it seems to me that's a big part of the solution. Here is
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Yes, you're welcome. And I'd like to go back to Mr. Frank Caputo for 5 minutes, please. Mr. Caputo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This has been eye-opening, illuminating. I think my colleague, Mr. Rogers, asked a poignant question about other jurisdictions. This could go to the Association of Federal Retirees or to the National President of RCMP, anybody who has any political connections, if you will, and by that, connections doesn't sound right. Any sort of political, what would be the terminology I'm looking for? Associations or liaisons, anybody who deals with government at a fairly high level. Do we know why in 2015 and 2017 this was in the mandate letter? And I presume that was the first time it was. I suppose mandate letters haven't always been released. Do we know why? Has anybody been given an answer as to why it disappeared in 2017?
No, so short answer. We, as part of our advocacy, meet with a lot of MPs. Some of you we have met with, either at the local level or at the national level. It is always one of our priorities that we talk about veterans, and one of our priorities. And we don't, the answer to the question is that probably it was because of the advocacy work, not only by us, I don't want to take all the credit for this, but by the veterans associations, and there are many of them, the RCMP associations, and there are a couple of them, and the advisory committee, the pension advisory committees, the three committees that have been established, and it's in the law to have these committees. The unions have been pushing as well from their point of view. Of course, their main focus is on current employees, but they also think of employees that will be retiring, and we have close relationships with them. I remember in the 2017 meeting with the then Minister of Veterans Affairs and then Minister of National Defense, pushing for the idea of marriage after 60 and our advocacy work there. But as to why they took it back, I think they had other priorities, maybe. Because the mandate letters are based on the priorities they feel are politically sensitive at the time.
If I could follow up, Mr. Chair, with what Mr. Solier said, is there, I'm not sure about the demographics when it comes to people who at what age they're at when it comes to veterans or RCMP or those who would be affected. Is there going to be a surge in retirements in the coming years that would impact this? Is that a possible rationale? Do we have any of that data, as in how many people are 5 years from retirement, that type of thing?
We certainly don't have the data. We deal with the public service and MPs and senior government officials. There's no indication that there's going to be a rush to retirement. The major hump, if you want, in retirements is when government instituted some constraints. In 1994, for example, there was a big rush, not a rush, but the people were given special packages to get out of the public service because they wanted to reduce. That had impact on pensions, and we provided at that time a lot of seminars saying, watch out if you retire, and here's what you should be looking for in terms of your retirement. But a lot of people took the early packages without having a true indication on the implication to their pension.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have remaining?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Yes. Okay. I won't even get a question out in that time. So I'm happy to give that to someone else. Thank you.
All right. Thank
I'm
you
happy
so
to
much.
take it.
How do we say that? Un peu plus tard.
A little later, you'll have that time, Ms. Blaney.
Let's have Mr. Shane Casey for 5 minutes, and after we'll see with Ms. Blaney. Go ahead, Mr. Casey.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start with the what was called the OSB, as I understand it, and I'm not sure exactly what that stands for, except I believe the first word is optional, but if I understand the testimony to date, this OSB plan allows for a pensioner to have a deduction from his pension in order to be able to provide a portion of that pension after his death to his survivor. Now, I think we've heard Mr. Imbeau speak of this, and also the Pinsents. So if I may start with Mr. Imbeau, with regards to the OSB, have I characterized it correctly that the way it would work would be that a pensioner could take a 50% cut in his pension in order to allow for a pension of 50% of his to go to his survivor. Is that the scheme?
So yes, so essentially it says you choose between providing a survivor pension of 30, 40, or 50% of your own pension, and then your monthly pension is then reduced accordingly to the level of benefit that you choose. And the greater the survivor pension is, the greater the reduction in the pension. And so yes, that's how that works.
Okay, thank you for that. It strikes me that the people who need that benefit most are the ones least able to afford it. Does your organization have any statistics on what the uptake is for this program?
No, we don't have any specific statistics, but I know, I mean, this is just anecdotal, but I've been told that it's fairly low because just by speaking, I've been at this job for about 8 years, and every time I speak to someone about it, I have literally never heard of someone taking this option, because while it's good that it exists and it gives a pension if there is the option, like if, as you said, if you've got a very small pension, taking a 50% cut is a substantial amount.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Okay, and any sense for where we might be able to look for data on uptake? I'm quite interested to know whether your anecdotal view is one that would be borne out, and where would I be able to find that? Any idea?
I mean, that's part of our brief, is asking to look at this kind of data and see if where we could find it. I'm assuming that the pension center would probably have an idea of how many people do the take up, but I couldn't speak for them. You'd have to ask them.
Thank you. In the opening remarks from your organization, was Mr. Pizzino talked about the complexity of this issue and the importance of clear and accurate data. Now, it's my understanding that after this was the fund, the Veteran Survivor Fund, was put in the 2019 budget, that then there was then an effort to pull together the data from CIMVHR in order to identify the size and characteristics of the survivor population. So given his comment with respect to the importance of data, given that at least a couple of years have passed, could we have your comment on whether a couple of years is reasonable to gather the information that is necessary to assess what should be done with respect to this Veteran Survivor Fund, how it should be structured?
I mean, I believe it would have been possible, considering, like I spoke to Eric Lee, his research has been done, it's just never been published. And being able to pull up those numbers, I mean, it shouldn't be too, we're not asking for these gigantic studies about like how many people are affected, in like doing a quantitative study and doing surveys and whatever else. We're just basically looking at data that should already exist within the pension center of how many people are affected. And then you could ask someone like the PBO to look, or an actuary to look at how much it would impact the pension plan. And that itself, again, shouldn't be a 2-year process.
And what advice would you have for the government without yet having that data? What advice would you have for the government with respect to the structure of the Veteran Survivor Fund, given that it appears clearly to still be a work in progress?
I mean, I don't understand why it hasn't been, why the funds have not been doled out. I mean, I guess maybe there's some issue with identifying exactly who these people are. But again, I'm taking guesses because as Anthony spoke about, we need transparency here. We don't know what's going on. We don't know why they haven't been able to identify these people. We don't know why they haven't been given the funds. We know that there was research done from CIMVR and it wasn't published. So what's going on? Like, I understand there's possibly issues with COVID, and that's why, like, for example, Eric Lee's research was affected, but that shouldn't affect numbers of of take up, and the pension center should have this information.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Imbo.
Include the RCMP vets. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kissy. Et là, nous allons passer.
Now we will go to 2 short rounds of 2.5 minutes. I don't think we'll have time to go to Ms. Wagenthal and Mr. Sanson unless they have a quick question.
I'd like to invite Mr. Luc Desilets.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mais non, ils ont pas...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, they surely don't have any questions. You'll see. Just joking. My question is for Mr. Soulière. We understand that people say it would cost too much money. First question, please answer quickly because I have 3. Can we use the surplus of the fund to finance this? The surplus, well, we have to see if there's a surplus. The plans now are invested. There's a surplus, but the difficulty is that there are 2 pension funds. There's the pension plan for those who worked before and who will take their pension before the year 2000, and the pension plan for after the year 2000. So that complicates things even more. I understand. For surpluses, the goal of the investments is to eventually pay out all of the pensions based on investments. It increases year over year, and we did well this year. The Public Investment Board, the Pension Investment Board, invests for the 3, not just for the government. So if there's a surplus, it's not up to them to decide whether changes are to be made. Okay, but is there a surplus that could be used currently? It's difficult. Patrick, I don't have an answer to that. I'm not sure right now. I haven't seen the new numbers. Usually they come out in May or June. Okay, we may not have concluded our study. If we were able to get those numbers, that could be very useful. It would elucidate that whole aspect, the availability of funds or not. Otherwise, Mr. Soulière, what would it involve in terms of an increase in contributions currently to be able to meet this demand to these 2 aspects? That's a very difficult question on a Friday afternoon. I don't know if I can answer properly. But contributions currently are 50-50 from the employer and from the employee. It's 50-50. I think unions would vociferously object if there were changes. They fought for that 50-50. The answer to that is probably not. Thank you, Mr. Soulière. I'd like to now go to Ms. Blaney, and Mr. Desilets took the 30 seconds from Mr. Caputo. So, Ms. Blaney, go ahead.
That is not fair, Chair. So I would like to come back and ask a couple of questions of Norma. I just want to say, first of all, that Walter's devotion to you is very apparent to all of us here in this room. And I just want to thank both of you because you've had to be incredibly honest about the reality you're living, and that's something that we need to hear. But I also feel very uncomfortable that you have to put your hearts on the table in this way for us to look at it. So I want to recognize that first. But in your testimony, Norma, you said something really important to me, which is about the dedication to family, that it's not just about the 2 of you, but it is in fact about a son that you're caring for and also a granddaughter. So I'm just wondering if you could speak to us about the impact it will have on those relationships and your responsibility if you are without Walter and without that part of your economic benefit?
It probably means that I would not be able to help in some ways that I would really like to. And things change so much over time. When Walt and I made our decision to opt out of the pension thing, nobody anticipated $2.03 for a liter of gas and that sort of thing, right? With our grandchild, she is a verbal autistic, but she will never be able to live independently. And I take that burden as my own. Walt's older son has some government supports, but as I said, nothing is ever certain. But for me, the granddaughter is a liability and a responsibility that I take very, very seriously. And we already help with her schooling, and we help with things like music lessons, etc. Once Poppy is gone, Nanny Norma takes the same responsibility.
Without the same resources. And I think that's what's so important. After so many years of marriage, building a family, you feel that without that financial support, you won't be able to do the duties that you are responsible for.
And that I want to do.
Thank you for that. That honesty, I think, is absolutely apparent. And I just want to say to Walt that I believe that Norma's worth it, and I promise to continue this fight for as long as it takes. Thank you both. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Blaney and Ms. Blaney. Donc, mesdames, messieurs, c'est...
Ladies and gentlemen, it's on that note that we will conclude this meeting. I'd like to thank all of the witnesses for having participated in this study. As you know, it's the first meeting. We will hold 2 more. So I invite you to write to us if you have other information to share with us. And I can even say that by the end of this parliamentary session, the committee will surely have time to produce a report and share recommendations. So don't hesitate to write to us to tell us what you'd like to see in that report. So on that note, Mr. Chair, a few seconds, Mr. Sanson. Yes, you said earlier that perhaps there could be a short question and a short comment. It's true, as well as Ms. Kathy Wagenthal. So 30 seconds each. Go ahead, and then an answer in 30 seconds. Daryl Sanson, please.
Chair, and thank you for your testimony, all of you, and your service. It's extremely touching, but also difficult to listen to and to think that, as we move forward, that the challenges will get greater for financial issues is very important to note. My only comment is that this is long-standing. It's since 1994, 9 private members' bills were tabled in the House of Commons. So it's been a challenge now for over 30 years. So we need to get to work on this. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And Mrs. Wagenthal, would you like to say something?
Certainly, I appreciate the opportunity. What we've heard today is about a situation that many of you were not aware of until it hit you in the face. And we hear a lot about that on this committee, about how late in the process people become aware, or in some cases have a back injury and weren't aware that their back is divided into 4 sections and you have to apply for all 4, this type of thing. So I just want you to know we'll continue to challenge whatever government is in place to make life simpler for those who have served us, taking the ultimate sacrifice as a possibility and dealing with so many challenges later in life. And we will continue, I believe, as a committee to support you in your endeavors with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Rogenthal. So, je voudrais donc prendre le temps.
I'd like to take the time to thank each one of you. So, as an individual, Robert Demers, a veteran of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Walter Pinsent, Staff Sergeant, retired,
Canadian Mounted Police, and Mrs. Norma Pinsent, et de l'association
from the National Association of Federal Retirees, Jean-Guy Souliard, President, Anthony Pizzino, Chief Executive Officer, Patrick Imbo, Advocacy and Policy Officer, who is with us as well. And finally, from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Veterans Association, Alexander Glenn, National President. Thank you. And on behalf of committee members, I wish you an excellent weekend. Thank you. And committee members, I will suspend our meeting so we can move to the following portion on Zoom because we will be continuing in camera. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
séance est suspendue.
The meeting is suspended.